And we are back once again for another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. If I'm sounding a little hoarse, it's because I am. And after Friday's show, I kind of came down with something, which is really rare because I haven't been theoretically sick for about, I don't know, 3 years, right? So it's pretty rare, and that's what I'm looking for. Just I don't know, unusual, bothersome when I actually get sick. So, what we're going to do here tonight is we're going to try to go as long as we can because I'll see how much my voice can hold out over the course of the show. But it's one of those things, it's like once you get going, it's like it's all good, right? It's just you ever read about like when I was a kid growing up, there would be some athlete who would have this just like horrific flu, like Michael Jordan or Walter Payton or somebody like that before the game, and then they'd force themselves to play, and then they would have these incredible games as they played through the flu. And I often wondered if the concentration of having to just gut through your physical symptoms actually helped their performance, right? I'm thinking, man, maybe their intense focus on just getting their shit done was the thing that elevated their game to the next level. So I'm going to try to do that tonight. I'm just going to focus and try to elevate my game and get to the next level. So, first of all, welcome. Thank you all for being here, and we'll do a little name check roll call here in a minute. Here's the lay of the land for however long I can keep this thing going, and I think we'll be able to get in at least a good 2 hours, hopefully. This is not fun. Oh, there we go. Darlena is going to be jumping on here in about 10 minutes, and she's going to tell you about this course that she's offering. It's a 7-week course, and it sounds really phenomenal. And not just will you understand some of the underpinnings of astrology and, of course, human design as the two of them work together, which is really what the course is about. But you're going to get 2 individual readings from Darlena, which probably worth the price of the course alone. So anyway, she's going to be on here in about 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about that and cover everything that goes along with the course, which would be really cool. And then after she exits stage left, we'll look at where we are astrologically with like what's going on right now, sort of a chart of the moment deal. We'll talk about Cancer since we're in Cancer season, and we'll dive into Cancer. And it's always an interesting theme to explore, like whatever sign we're in, the month that we're in. I think it's an interesting theme to explore. So we'll get into some Cancer stuff, some Cancer people, right? And then we're going to take a bit of a divergent path to some degree, and we're going to look at this 29-degree Neptune in Pisces, and what happens historically when Neptune is at 29 degrees Pisces. You'll be very surprised when I travel back into time, and there are at least 2 epochs or 2 periods where Neptune has been at that anaretic degree over the last 3 Neptune cycles. So we're going to cover all 3 of those Neptune cycles. But out of those 3, the one that is probably the most telling is the one that is the furthest out from this current Neptune cycle. So we're going to get kind of the lay of the land. And there's a reason why I'm bringing this up is because there were a lot of things this last week that happened on, or last 2 weeks that have happened on the religious tip that I thought were very interesting and kind of a harbinger of things to come. And so we're going to kind of open that discussion about Neptune and its relationship to religion, specifically the Abrahamic faiths, in Pisces. And then what comes next, right? What happens after Neptune goes into Aries? What are we all going to become like Visigoth pagan worshippers with Neptune and Aries? Is that where all this is headed? Could be interesting. All right. Let's see. Who do we have here? Let's do a quick shout out here before Darlena gets on. Let's see. We've got Misbehaving 2, California Contrarian, Patricia, just being me. I love that. Ojos Azules, ¿qué pasa? Susie G, what's happening, Queen of Hearts? Good to see you. Scrubbies is here. Airplane window seat. I like that, and I like the like. I like the like. Hit that like. Thank you. It's good to have Susie back, by the way. Here we go. Look at that. 2-4 splendid projector incarnation cross vessel of love. You and I are the same thing. I have that too. Although my moon is not in Cancer and I'm not a Virgo ascendant, but we are connected in the HD world. Let's see who else we have. There's my man, Tom Jordan. Who else? There she is, the lovely and talented one. Dr. Joan S. She's in the house, cooking and listening. There we go. That's a good thing to do. Animals of Florida, just hit that like button. Yeah, just hit that like button. Please hit that like button. Krista Royce, hello back at you. It was 99. Is that in SoCal, Susie? Is that where you are? Let's see who else we have. Jill Wong checking in from Mexico. Hola, Jill. Let's see. Veronica's Barn. Back in action. Nora Rashid, the Queen of Speed. What a lovely Sunday it is, indeed. Let's see who else do we have here. Integrity Karma. INK. What's it? Derek Reagan Walls. Happy summer. We are in it, aren't we? We are definitely in it. Sharon Lewis, man oh man, hope the juice is worth the squeeze. I'm feeling you, Sharon. Lots of dinar infighting going on over Twitter, whether it's real or Memorex. So that's interesting. Don't be late for dinar. Who else do we have here? Curtis Moonflower, loving the moonstorms, walking barefoot in the pouring rain. Curtis has some game, man. Curtis has some game, I gotta say. Joe Potter, what's happening, Joe Potter? Good to see you. SJS, just really hope you're feeling more energetic this evening. We're working on it. We are working on the energetic part. Janine, what's happening, Janine? Good to see you. Moonsprout is here. Let's see, who else do we have? Michael Sister Nino. Man, Michael, way down in the batting order tonight. What's going on out there in California? You must be busy. Did I say hi to Misbehaving too? If not, there it is. A second time. Dry as a bone for weeks here in Western North Carolina. You know, normally that's us, but we had some precipitation. Precipitation in dusty Texas. Kubiki Theater, what's going on, Bo? Meow Meow Kitty Poop, best show on the internet. Oh, thank you. There's some good ones out there. There's some good shows out there. But you guys are all part of it. So you guys help make the show a good one, if not a great one. Rainbows and butterflies. Let us make your favorite show. Excellent. Sandy D. Yoo-hoo, Sandy D. Kelly B. Let's see who else we have. Maya Rose. Hi, Maya. Scott A. and bird flu. I know, Scott. That's what I was thinking too. I got the bird flu. I got the COVID. Saltwater gargle. That's always a winner, isn't it? That is always a winner. I'm going to fight through it, Nora. I'm going to be like Michael Jordan with 102 fever tonight, going for a triple double. Lynette Jardine, Mad Maxine, what's happening? She's here tonight. Tundar. Yeah, definitely get into the detox phase. That's for sure. Thanks, Aronell. It's all gravy from here on out. There's my man, the introspective woodworker, Ryan. He's here. Glenn Spank, tired all weekend. Yep. I'm telling you, man, to come down from Gemini to Cancer is a bit of a come down, isn't it? Energetically. We love you the way you are. Thank you, D.E. Saccone. I appreciate that. And I love all of you the way you are as well. None of you should ever change. Ever. All right. There's my man, Steve. Steve's here. He's in the house. Cynthia Cluth. All right. I think we're pretty much caught up here. I think we're pretty much caught up. You know what that means? That means, we got to say hi to Peter Bayonne. What's up, brother? Good to see you. And Laura Liberty. We got Laura Liberty here tonight. All right, let's bring on Ms. Darlena without any further delay, so we can get the lowdown on this fantastic course that she is about to offer each and every one of you. What's happening, Darlena? Can you hear me? Oh, she's frozen. There you are. You're not frozen now.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hi. Good.
Excellent. Yeah, you were kind of trancing out there for a minute.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, here we go. We're playing. Yeah. So we got a little bit of a delay. I don't know, maybe your signal a little bit, but we will get through this, and we will demonstrate our high level communication skills while we do it. So Darlena is here. Let me set the stage. Darlena, most of you know who Darlena is. If not, this is Darlena Watson. She is our great friend and human design maven. And some of you have actually had some sessions with her and seen what she can do with HD. So if you have not met Darlena, well, this is your opportunity to do that. And Darlena's been at our event, I think the last 3 events, and has done some fantastic presentations. And my mother really loved what you had to say. She said, "Oh, I really enjoyed her. That was so inspiring what she had to say." I'm like, "Oh, really? What about what I had to say, Mom? What'd you think about that?" "Oh, yeah. No, I really liked her. She was really good." Anyway, so Darlena is here because she has put together a 7-week course, which ties some loose ends together with astrology and human design, and gets you kind of in the mix at kind of a level 1 phase. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn the mic at me so I can put this up here as a visual. And Darlena, why don't you go ahead and tell people about this course that you've developed?
Okay. As Robert said, I was speaking at his conference this past year in the Hill Country. And in preparation for that, I started thinking about what human design has meant to me in my life and how it has helped me. And I've had some situations, of course, we all have through our lives that I really needed to take a deeper look at. But most recently, I had some things come up that really mentally challenged me, physically challenged me in my almost 40-year marriage. And if it had not been for human design, I might not have really survived it, to be honest with you. And so I started thinking about the importance of being able to apply human design to your life, not just to know it, but to really apply it. And so I based my presentation at Roberts that weekend on explaining how to apply human design to your life so that you can survive not only the tough times, but all times. Human design, when you really get to know your chart and figure out who you are authentically, it really does allow you to engage in your life in a different way. So I know my design so well now that I'm able to make decisions about what I do in my life, how I respond to situations that present themselves. All of that is done through what I know about my now, because for me, that's caused me a lot more peace in my life, because I know that if I interact in certain ways, it goes against my design and it's never going to turn out good. So connection with intention was born for that reason, because I really feel like without the support of learning what to do with your design, once you really start trying to work it, without that support, it's very hard to attain the knowledge and really utilize it in your life. So Bloom's taxonomy, which is what's on the screen, is an educational tool that I used when I was teaching in the public school system in Texas. And it suggests that the very, very lowest level of learning is at the knowledge level. And in order to really utilize information that you gather in your life, you've got to move on up that pyramid to a different level of learning. And that's what connection with intention seeks to do. It's a way for us to work together. You get a video every week, and then we have a live question and answer. The videos are all on your own time, but once a week we'll have a live question and answer where we can really talk about this stuff, support each other through the understanding and learning how to apply this to your life, so that you really can start to see the effects of it, and how almost immediately, with something as basic as a level 1 understanding of human design, you'll start to see how it unfolds in your life in such a way that people will ask you, what is different? What are you doing differently? Because when you start entering your life through design, through your authenticity, it's very noticeable. It changes your reactionary behaviors that, if you're not sure how you're supposed to work, you may be reactive versus creative in your life. So that's the whole point of connection with intention. It's so that we can work together to really understand what human design is, how it relates to astrology. You're not really learning anything new. You're just adding to what you already know, and then being able to use it in your life. In this, Robert, every single person will get both an incarnation cross reading from me and a level 1 reading from me. And as y'all know from having talked with me on several occasions, I'm a little bit wordy. So I have a pretty detailed document for you guys that's really going to help outline this. It's not a form. It's something that I prepare for each person that takes the course. And for that reason, we only have limited this number to 30, because I have to write all of these things for you and send them. So each week you'll have your video that is accompanied by a PowerPoint, and then you'll have questions, just for fun and for understanding, that will move you up the level of Bloom's taxonomy to make sure that you're really understanding what you're reading and how to apply it, or what you're hearing and how to apply it. Then we'll have our live question and answer session. And then the next week or the next day you get your next video. So it's 1 video a week for 7 weeks and 6 question and answer sessions before that level 1 reading is delivered into your inbox. Then when you get your level 1 reading, you actually know what to do with it and how to start using it in your life. It's all going to make sense versus having something that you really are just like, well, this is cool, but what the heck do I do with it? So as Robert showed you on the screen, these are the course breakdowns and takeaways. And as I mentioned, I am a certified teacher and I am trained in human design. So it's a marriage between those two things for me, because I just don't feel that it has been as productive in lives as I would like to see it become, simply because I think it is difficult to put it into play in your life if you don't have the support to really understand what it is that's being asked of you.
Right. So let's just go over this model quickly. So what Darlena is doing is over the course of 7 weeks, she'll send you a copy of the first lesson via video. So you will download that, you'll watch it, you'll go over it. And then it's what is it, the following week you will meet together online, right? And you'll answer
Correct.
any questions and go over that week's course load. Is that correct?
Correct. And also the classmates will have a chance to, you know, ask questions that are, you know, as long as we're within our time limit, the topics can be really whatever they want. This, if something particular happened to them that they really want to know, if that's a human design question, or any way that we can really support each other through this information, would not be off topic.
Right. Okay. So that's the 6 live Q&A sessions, and that's followed by the sending out of the coursework. So you have a week to assimilate that and then come up with any questions or any comments, or then you can go over that with Darlena. So she does this for 7 weeks. And then you're going to get this incarnation cross reading, which is really cool. And then an individually specific astrozyme mandala that's created by you, and then a body graph reading as well. That's an incredible value in general. I remember when human design really came onto the scene, and Ra, who was running the show, it was massively expensive. And one of the reasons why it was massively expensive is that they wanted to make it exclusionary, right? It was like that was their way of containing the information. But now, since Ra has passed on, it's become much more open source in a lot of ways. So people like Darlena, who are quite good at it, can provide their own knowledge and their own value to the experience. So Darlena, normally this is a $699 class, but you have a special deal for these people tonight, don't you?
I do, Robert. I have become so incredibly fond of you and what you stand for, and what you've been able to do for all the people that you work with. And the people that I've read for that are also your clients are usually so much more knowledgeable about what I'm even talking about through their understanding of astrology. So we've given a coupon code. That's the only thing I know to call it for your people, Robert. And it's Phoenix with a capital PHOENIX. If you will enter that at the time you purchase your course, you will receive a $200 discount for this course.
So that's 7 weeks. Let's break this down now. That's 7 weeks worth of instruction. That is an incarnational cross reading, and that's a level 1 reading, both of which are completely done by you. There's no program. You're the one that's coming up with everything that needs to be said about that. So you're getting 2 readings plus 7 weeks worth of course and knowledge. That's a fantastic deal.
Robert, what I love about the way I'm putting this together, the incarnation cross reading will come to them at week 4, and your
Yep.
incarnation cross is your advocacy to the planet. It's your life purpose and the whole reason for the chart to begin with. Everything in the chart is the curriculum that helps you grow so that you can live out your incarnation cross. And through my years of teaching, it's come to my understanding that if you don't have an objective for why you're learning something, then you're kind of wasting your time. So with the incarnation cross coming first, before they get their level 1 reading, they will fully understand their life purpose coursework through human design, what it is that their life purpose through design is, so that as they begin to apply the level 1 learning that they'll get from their level 1 reading, they'll already know to what end, what this is what it's all about. This is why I'm learning this, so that I can live out my incarnation cross. So that comes first, so that, everybody has an opportunity to really understand what it is they're about. I think that is so difficult to figure out on your own, especially if you have an open identity center, because you're constantly trying to figure out who you are in relation to everything else. When you know your incarnation cross, it's kind of like having all your apples in a basket, and you're able to understand what you're supposed to do with these apples that may have been just strewn about willy-nilly until you understood what the whole reason for it was. So once
Right.
you know that at lesson 4, then lesson 5 and 6 are on type, strategy, and authority. And then on week 7, they will actually get that incarnation cross that they will be fully able to understand, read, and immediately start applying to their life for the purpose of the incarnation cross.
Beautiful. So the dates that you want to be aware of here are Tuesday, July 9th. This is when all of this kicks off, right? So you guys can get in now and get a seat. Remember, Darlena is only going to take 30 people. So if you're interested, I probably wouldn't wait on it too long. That said, if for some reason you can't make it or you get bumped, she's going to do another one in January, which you can see right down here at the bottom, right? So she's got 2 of these lined up, sort of Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn presentations. So I think this is really great. I'm glad you're able to offer this to the 11th house and Chatarians, and you can give them a pretty healthy discount. Is there anything else you want to say about this course in general, Darlena?
Sure. I know times are kind of tough for everybody right now. If you cannot find a way to attend the class in July, the July 9th one, and I need anybody that wants to sign up a little bit earlier, because I'll need to contact you to get the dates of your birth so that I can create your mandala and your body graph and get those sent to you ASAP before starts. But that January course, Robert, I want to offer that to your group as well at the discounted price of $4.99. So anybody that just can't do it right now, that wants to go ahead and sign up for the January one, you can just put down a deposit of $100 and then hold your spot for that January one, and you will get it at the discounted Phoenix price.
There you go. That's a great deal. Excellent. So you got some options for people. And I guess it's what's the saying? Anything worth having is worth waiting for. So maybe January is going to be your golden apple that you get to bite into. Well, Darlene, I think it's going to be great. I mean, you've never disappointed, whenever you've been on this show or when you've been at our event in October. And I have no doubt that you will be a screaming success with this course as well. So thank you for being here. All the information is also inside of the show notes. So when you go to Darlena's site, you'll see a pop-up. She'll have a video there. She'll talk you through everything. And then she'll talk you through where to go to sign up. So it's all very easy. Just go to darlenawatson.com.
Robert, thank you so much. I'm super excited about this course. My husband has already taken the course. He's
Really?
watched the videos, and yeah, and he does not enjoy typical learning. He's a worker. He likes to work and do things, but he doesn't necessarily like school learning. And he actually was able to follow along effortlessly and really get a lot of good information from the course. And he is a good one for me to try it out on. So I think
Joe
your
Dan
people
was a good
will really
Joe
enjoy
Dan
it
was
as
a good
well.
test case. Yeah, good. Excellent.
He was.
Yeah. All right, Darlena. So I guess we'll check in with you again just to see how the course is going at some point, right? We'll bring you on and we'll just say, hey, man, this thing is cooking. And, we got some slots open in January if you're interested. So we'll check back in on you and we'll see how it's going, okay?
Okay, I love to talk human design. So anytime you're up for it, I'm up for it.
Sounds great, Darlena. Thank you so much.
Thank Thank you,
Okay, there,
Robert. Have a good night.
there she is, the great Darlena Watson. And hey, this is going to be a dynamite course. This is going to be a really, really dynamite course. And here we go. And if you have, see, the thing is, right? Like back in the day, human design was just so incredibly expensive and over the top. And again, I think some of it had to do with the fact that they just wanted this exclusionary kind of vibe. And it kept people from, thinking that human design was something that was non-proprietary. Well, they did their best. Rod did his best to make it as proprietary as possible. Right. Like all the trainings, all the teacher trainings were incredibly expensive. So, I mean, there was a threshold, right? There was an economic threshold. So it kind of kept its sort of, I don't know, vault of secrecy to some extent. Well, that's all gone now. So it's great to see somebody like Darlena and all these other human design people that have, taken the system and just run with it, which is really what you're supposed to do, to be honest with you. Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we make a transition and let's get into the chart of the moment. And oh, you know what I did today? Rummaging around and looking at history will provide you with some very unusual stories about certain people. And I ran across this guy. We'll get to the astrology, I promise. I ran across this guy right here. His name is Samuel Nyman. So believe it or not, this guy's about 26 years old. Back then, this is what a 26-year-old looked like in 1861. Believe it or not. So what you're looking at here is the father of cocaine. So cocaine was, they were getting these coca leaves from Peru in Europe, and they were loving the shit, right? So he actually isolated the cocaine alkaloid inside of the coca leaf. So the old flake business here starts with Samuel Nyman. And he's also, even though they were kind of doing it, it was one of those things where two people were doing it simultaneously in different parts of the world. In this case, it was Europe. He's also one of the founders of mustard gas. So basically, he invents cocaine and mustard gas. And he dies because he inhaled. He didn't overdose on cocaine. He inhaled mustard gas and died. So there you go, Samuel Nyman. But you didn't know that. I didn't. The father of cocaine and mustard gas. See, the things you learn over here on Sunday Night AstroLive. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get into the chart of the moment. And then eventually it's going to lead us into this discussion about Neptune and Pisces and the final degrees of Neptune and Pisces. And it's really interesting because I don't know if you guys have been following what's been going on with Archbishop Vigano, but he's, I guess, reached this point where he's entered into the realm of schism inside of the Catholic Church. So he was summoned by Pope Francis basically to be excommunicated. Now, I have not heard that he has been excommunicated yet, but I just want you to just, like put a dog ear on that, right? As an individual, right? As an individual going through schism and excommunication at 29 Neptune and Pisces. Just hold it right there. Because at some point we are going to go back in the annals of history, and I will show you that this has happened before with a very significant person. So it's fascinating to me when we're able to see these astrological trends and cycles and just kind of nail it almost 1-to-1. So we're going to go there, but not yet. He's on the list when we get into this exploration of Neptune and Pisces. So remember, all the information you need for Darlena is in the show notes right there, which is visible to most everybody who can see the show page. All right, what time is it? 7:06 p.m. Okay. Let's check out where we are now. I'm telling you, man, this downshift, into Cancer, major downshift. All right, hold on. Let me do this up here. Because I was definitely burning the electric wires with all that Gemini. I like the mental stimulation. I like the stimulation, the electrical stimulation. All right, let's go in here. Let's see. And Cancer is such a very different energy, isn't it? It's like drastically different energy. So let's get into this right here. All right. So this is the chart right now. So we have the sun in Cancer right there, 2 degrees. I think this is the last night of the strawberry moon, which has the moon at its closest position to the earth, I think, for another 18 years or something absurd like that, right? So it's like you could just reach out and touch the moon. But it's a really interesting juxtaposition always when you have the sun in Cancer and then the moon in Capricorn. It's almost like for the two of them to really complete the circuit, it's almost like they have to be reversed in some ways. So we get the sun in Capricorn and the moon in Cancer, and we get that balance, right, in a lot of ways. But the moon in Capricorn is such a what it feels to me like. So we're in the growing season now here in the northern hemisphere, and the moon in Capricorn, full moon in Capricorn. If you are somebody who is a grower or invested in agriculture, or you're somebody who's off the grid or a homesteader or something like that, the moon in Capricorn should be a reminder of what you need to do to get through the season, right? This is what you'd want to do to get through the season. Like you need to take into account anything that could go wrong, whether it's temperature, water, blight, whatever is happening in terms of growing and can be a threat. Your moon in Capricorn says, okay, you've got to be in this for the long haul, right? Because the moon in Capricorn is no frills. So I think it's an interesting opposition. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, like you're growing something, you're in the midst of making sure that you're tending to the completion of the thing that you're growing. The Capricorn moon is, I wouldn't say it's a hard driver, but it clearly is aware of time and circumstance and things that can possibly go wrong, right? So I think it's an interesting juxtaposition from that regard, because the moon in Capricorn is not warm and fuzzy. Now, the new moon in Cancer may be a little more fuzzy than that, right? But the full moon in Capricorn is a reminder of the hard work that lies ahead in order for you to see your creation come to fruition, which will happen sometime during the fall, hopefully, right? To me, that's what it represents, at least from this position of the earth and agriculture and growth, agronomy. That's how I see it working out to the best of its um, you astrological import, right? Now we can look at it from a completely different perspective, and it's a very juxtaposed energy, right? It's a very the sun and Cancer to me are like the folk. The folk. It's the village. It's the square. It's the people that live in the shire, right? That's the sun in Cancer, and you know who your neighbors are. You feed the birds, or you feed the deer, or you take the bear out, for a drive down to the 7-Eleven or something. I saw this video the other day. It's always Russia. It's always these fucking Russians. This guy is driving. It's in the snow, and he's got like an SUV, and he opens the door, and one by one, these three tigers climb into the guy's fucking SUV. And it's like, okay, we're ready to go. Now, where he's taking them, I have no idea. Right. But it's it's always Russia. You see those videos of like the bear hanging out in the living room drinking beer, with the Russian dude. I mean, that shit cracks me up, man. Um, but anyway, that's the Cancerian sun, right? It's the folk. We're close to the land, we're close to the water, we're close to the source of all life. It's the great mother. Cancer is the great. Some people think that Taurus is the great mother. I don't have a problem with that. But Cancer is also the great. They work literally hand in glove. You can't have one without the other. You can't have earth without water, and you can't have water without earth. And when you look at the zodiac, Taurus is the first earth sign, and Cancer is the first water sign. So we're talking primary earth and primary water, and those are the elements of growth, fundamentally, right? So when we have the moon in Capricorn, that represents a very, very different kind of, um, just represents a different kind of structure altogether. I can't get Kamala Harris out of my head with this moon in Capricorn. This whole idea of the mamala, right? And she's kind of set up, even though she's never had a kid. I wonder why, but she's never had a kid. And yet Drew Barrymore is basically drooling at her feet, calling her the mamala. And so what did the mamala do this week? Well, she basically welcomed the LGBTQ plus community to Washington, D.C., right? That's what she did. There was like all these little festivities where, she was just absolutely delighted to uh, partake in them. And so when I think of that, right? When I think of transgender in general, I think of Baphomet, because Baphomet basically has tits and a dick, right? This is the story of Baphomet. When you look at Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner is an imitation of Baphomet. There used to be this saying, imitation of Christ. It was based on this book by Thomas Kempis, who was one of these guys who used to like to self-flagellate himself, right? He was one of those kinds of Christians. But this whole idea of an imitation Baphomet is clearly, part of the mythology of our time, right? And then here's the moon, right? The mamala, basically welcoming her transgendered offspring theoretically into Washington, D.C., right? So it's a very different kind of expression of the moon. And that was just one that I landed on when I saw that. And this whole thing with these unfortunate sex change uh, surgeries. Those are all ritualistic uh, pay-ins to Baphomet, right? That's what they are. Those are all ritualistic workings for Baphomet when you get right down to it. And none of the people involved with any of that will share it with you at that level. The other thing that's interesting is that this week, and we can crank this thing back to Friday. In fact, I did a couple shows on this week over on 15 Minutes of Flame, and it had to do with a doctor, uh, Ethan Heim, from, I believe he's from Houston, and he was the one that outed Texas Children's Hospital. And then there was a nurse who was basically doing the same thing. She was actually inside uh, Texas Children's Hospital, and she got a visit from the FBI. This is all like in the last week, right? And again, it kind of is on that string, right? It's on that moon in Capricorn, sun in Cancer kind of string. Because the sun in Cancer is biological, it is analog. And when we get over here and we get into this oppositional energy, with Capricorn, and even to a greater extent, Aquarius, we're having a very different discussion about life and life forms. So I thought it was quite interesting that this week that this would come out with these two people, and one of whom is going to, could face up to 10 years in prison, $250,000 fine, right? So that's all happening. That's all happened here within the last 48 hours. And I remember I was talking about it on Wednesday and Thursday on the show. And then it came into, a great deal of focus on Friday. Right. So that also falls into this oppositional energy, with the moon in Capricorn, which is, again, kind of cold and austere. And, I'll even use the word surgical, right? In opposition to the sun in Cancer, which is much more analog and much more connected to true feelings and true maternal energy, right? So it's been an interesting full moon cycle, let's put it that way. And tomorrow when you guys wake up, that full moon is going to be, well, the end of the full moon, but it'll be on Pluto tomorrow. It'll be on Pluto tonight, but tomorrow when you go to work, there'll be this moon Pluto conjunction in Aquarius. And that's kind of heavy, actually, to be honest with you. You start the week off like that with a moon Pluto conjunction in Aquarius. So what does that look like? What does that look like? Let me just think about this. Let me think about this. I would not be surprised if we start to hear, and tomorrow would be an absolutely banner day for it, if we start to hear about alternative forms of conception and birth, right? Like not even and nothing analog, not like the whole idea of a cesarean would be quaint when it comes to what's on getting ready to be pulled off the shelf. And that would be essentially the entire process from start to finish, right? The entire process from start to finish, being completely synthetic. Well, with the exception of the genetic building blocks, because you need an egg, and then of course you need sperm, right, for this fusion, this cosmic fusion of life to occur. Then after that, wherever that occurs, what happens from that moment forward, well, this is ultimately where I believe they want to take the whole idea of conception and procreation, birth. But birth rates are down, obviously. They're way down. And I think if you were to follow the bouncing ball and go all the way back to 2020, one of the reasons birth rates are down is because of what happened in 2020 and moving forward. It's not the entirety or the extent of it, but it's clearly part of the story, right? So we have this Moon Pluto conjunction coming in, and I would be very surprised if we didn't hear about some marvelous breakthrough in fertility and birth that has nothing to do with humans, right? Nothing to do with humans at all. I'd be very surprised if that didn't happen, particularly because Pluto will still be in an inconjunct with the Sun, which it is, right? And so the Moon coming in, and it's like, oh, look what we're doing here. We're opening up a can of worms that people weren't really ready to maybe hear or understand, right? But it's coming, and I have a sense that we'll hear some interesting news about that tomorrow. The other thing too, right, is that when we get into the Moon, we're getting into the home and homeland and the turf and all the stuff that goes along with the Moon and the Moon Pluto conjunction. Again, to me, it's like synthetic home or it's the synthetic. We've already talked about the synthetic womb, but it's like the synthetic home or the synthetic people that occupy the synthetic home. So in this regard, I'm talking about migrants and how it's a very different kind of displacement and process, and all of a sudden dropped in a new part of the world, right? But because in Aquarius, the whole idea is we're just supposed to accept all of this. We're just all one big happy family, right? So that's the idea behind Aquarius, is that, hey, let's open your home, bring them on in, right? um so I feel like we're gonna have, again, more news, more data, more update on that whole process as well. So I think Monday is going to be a heavy news day as regards to those two areas that I just mentioned. There was something else about that I wanted to bring up. What was it? Shit. It was right on the tip of my tongue. All right, if I think about it, I'll remember it. So that's just the Moon, right? And we're coming off of that Capricorn full moon and just banging right into Pluto retrograde right there in Aquarius. Okay, so let's talk about Cancer since we're in Cancer season and we have the Sun, Venus, we have the part of fortune based on everything here tonight, and we have Mercury all in Cancer. And I really feel like this is a time of year, specifically this time of this year, that how do I say this without being a doomer? I really feel like you should really pay attention and celebrate what you have this summer with all this Cancerian energy. I feel like it's important for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I think it's and again, I'm just going to break this down for the U.S. I know there are a lot of people out there who are not from the U.S., but you can apply this to your own life as well because this is coming up on our quote unquote birthday, right? But this Cancerian energy is, I think, really special and important because I don't think there's a guarantee that this time next year the things that we talk about are going to be the same. In fact, they won't be because that's just how things are. There will always be something different to talk about, but we're headed into a very intense zone this July, and then of course we have the unknown territory of the upcoming uh, election cycle as well, right? And everything, all the fun and joy that goes along with that. So I really feel like this is the Cancer season of all Cancer seasons. Right? Get into it. Have barbecues, have your friends over, right? Be able to, connect with people, especially, that are on the same block or around the corner. I'm going to have a 4th of July get together here. I'm actually going to invite some of my neighbors to meet the rest of the weirdos that come over here and hang out with me. So that'll be fun, right? Well, there's a couple weirdos in this neighborhood too, but they're different. Anyway, this is what we want to do. And, I think during a time like this, you can actually strengthen your bonds. You could really strengthen your bonds because I don't know. Maybe these people will come over to my house and all of a sudden we're talking about, what happens if the shit hits the fan. And, the next thing we've got a little rollout plan or whatever. Who knows, right? You never know. You never know. So I really feel like this Cancerian energy for this year is quite important. And you want to let those uh, sort of summer vibes just really sink in, right? Really sink in and let them become a part of who you are. Because I'm not sure there's any guarantee after next year that any of this will be similar to what it is now. There's just no guarantee, right? And you can say, well, there's no guarantee with anything in life, and that's true. But based on all these major aspects that are coming, right? The transition from Neptune into Aries and Saturn into Aries, all of that happening next year, and Uranus going to Gemini. I mean, the 2025 is a huge, huge, huge year astrologically, and again Neptune moving out of Pisces and this whole idea of the Piscean age and these Abrahamic faiths, right? We're moving to a new time. And it feels to me like this is kind of the last outcropping of what we know and consider to be what summer or Cancer looks and feels like in the way that we know it and have known it, right? Because I just feel like it's going to be very different moving forward. So get into it, enjoy it, right? And if you have things like chickens or plants or whatever those things are that you're growing, understand that this is an important time, and you really want to take care of them because with this whole idea of bird flu running around in the background, like whatever the fuck that is, I've heard things where, oh well, it's zoonotic and it can leave species, right? It can leap into your dog and your cat. So what are they telling you? What are they telling you? They're telling you that if they need to, they'll come get your dog and cat and they'll eradicate your dog and cat. So we're in this really, really weird place right now with this whole, and everybody thinks, oh, it's just another scam. And you know what? Hey, look, it is a scam, right? It is a scam. And we just went through the biggest fucking scam of all time in 2020. And it's very easy to be cynical and hardened, right? But these people are relentless in their pursuit to deconstruct the world that we've been living in, deconstruct our humanity, deconstruct just the basic building blocks of life, whether it's having meat, grass-fed meat or organic meat in your diet, to having a beloved pet in your life. Trust me, they would go that far. They would absolutely go that far. Will they be able to pull it off? Who knows? There's too many fucking pets, right? And there are people who will sacrifice their own family before their pet. So good luck on that, right? But again, this is all very Cancerian stuff, So if you do tend animals, make sure that you tend to them well, So that nobody has any excuse to come by your homestead and give them a fucking, COVID test on your chickens or whatever, right? So again, this is all very deep Cancerian energy, which is the energy. Cancer is the energy of preservation. It's a conservative sign, right? It wants to preserve the things that it has. So maybe that's another thing that you can get busy with, right? Maybe you want to do some prepping, some canning, preserve some of your foods. This would be a good time to do it. You can get busy on that, right? And I would say by and large that Cancer is a sign that through its empathic and intuitive qualities, we understand how the other feels. And in that regard, I feel like it's a really good sign to be able to use as a bridge to relating to other people, right? I feel like we're able to empathically, connect with others through Cancer. Uh, Now, there are some impediments here when we look deeper into the old chartaroo, right? So we've got a Neptune square going on, and we look up here, we got a Neptune square with Mercury, or that's Venus. And then we have a Neptune square with the sun. That's because they're early, right? It's almost like the sun is in Gemini. So as this is all about 10 degrees. So the Venus square is about to separate. The square with the sun will be around for a little bit longer. And it feels to me like the Sun Neptune square is one of those squares where, and it's odd because they're both water signs, but by degree they're squaring each other. And it feels like that it's one of those squares where you have trust in somebody or something and you get let down. It's just one of those letdown squares, right? So if for whatever reason somebody doesn't follow through or they let you down, right? Just don't sweat it. Just, pick yourself up and, move on, right? And I know Cancer as a sign is pretty emotional. So just pick yourself up and move on and try not to let it, dig too far into your self-esteem, right? And the thing that is ultimately the saving grace out of something like that is when you forgive the other person. And sometimes that takes a lot of work and it's not the easiest thing to do. But if you can forgive the other person, ultimately it eradicates uh, anything and all the suffering, right? And if you can't fully forgive the person, there's no nobody's going to fault you for calling in any higher spiritual um, energy to help you do that, right? I mean, really, that's what it can really come down to is just to find the strength to forgive a certain person, and clearly, if you are dialed into the God within you, you can clearly ask for that as well. And you're not a pauper holding out your hand. You're just asking for the strength and the clarity and ultimately the compassion in the heart to do something like that, right? And if you can, then you can move beyond just about anything. um what else do we have here? We've got Chiron squaring off against Mercury. Now that square is going to continue to dig in. We're just getting started on that Chiron Mercury square. That one's an ouchie right there. That's an ouchie, right? Because Mercury in Cancer is so intuitive and perceptive and sensitive, right? And Chiron in Aries is the wound. And I know that there are a lot of people who would call themselves, more introverted or more just less social. We'll use the word less social. And to me, this is the the Mercury Chiron square would be the same thing as somebody who is just less social or more introverted, and then they find themselves in a situation where they have to perform or they have to say something that they really don't want to or feel like saying, right? But it's not just, can you just say this and get it over with? But it's almost like there's a cajoling kind of energy around that Chiron Mercury square. And it also feels, because Mercury's in sextile with Taurus here, Mars and Taurus, that there's more energy behind Mercury and Cancer, right? It's got more, I don't know, it's got more ballast behind it. It's like, oh yeah, I can say that, or I can share that, because Mars and Taurus, even though it's in its detriment, is pretty solid, right? It's like, yeah, I can back up my words. That's really what we're talking about here. With a Mercury Mars sextile, I can back up my words. Choose your words wisely, because somebody will call you on it, right? They'll call you on it. And then you're really gonna have to back up your words. It also feels a lot to me. I mean, we got into this again last week. We were talking about these whistleblowers, and this Mercury Cancer squaring Chiron and Aries just reeks of whistleblowing. And we have all these things going on now with the military. I just feel like we're gonna, like, the faucet is just gonna open, and we're gonna read about all these people that are blowing the goods on what's going on behind the scenes. Like, it's gonna happen. And the reason why they want to make examples out of whistleblowers, that so nobody else even dares approach the subject of telling people what's really going on. But it feels like that to me. It feels like there's more coming, right? Especially around this whole idea of war and this kind of war culture that's been brewing. Like, I think they're going to reinstate the draft. Like, the first step is you got to sign up for selective service, young men and women, right? All the way up to the age of 26. Like, since when did they do that? Like, why are they doing this? Why are they getting this idea in people's heads about it's just normal to sign up for the military again? No, these things happen at very particular times. Very, very particular times. So I feel like, again, is this part of it? Are we going to see some of that going on with what's happening behind the scenes with the military? I sure hope so. I hope so, because I think most people, if you really break it down, most people are just fucking tired and weary of fighting these bankers' wars and sending our kids to the meat grinder. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens if they do indeed go through with this, and what the ramifications are for people who decide that they don't want to do it. Right? I could easily see the government rounding people up, and if not every single young man and woman between the age of 21 and 26, enough of them to make a show of it, so that other people don't get thrown into some kind of military prison, right? I mean, this is a really touchy time that we're in. This Ukraine war just keeps going on and on and on and on. It's like a fucking Erica Badu song, right? On and on and on and on. It's not stopping. Um, and then you have whatever's going on in the Middle East, which is absolutely fucking nuts and insane. And these are wars that we should have no business being in, period, end of story. There's no business whatsoever, let alone having our kids get shipped out over there and having to just, die for these assholes. So anyway, I feel like that there's more around this whole military thing coming. And again, I'll just bring it back into this. We'll call this the season of the whistleblower. The season, we're just getting started on that. What else do we have? We got Neptune. Let's see. Neptune is square. We already got into those Neptune squares. We got into them Neptune squares. Let's talk about the moon post Pluto conjunction. The moon post Pluto conjunction goes right into square with Mars. So by the time we hit tomorrow night, right, that moon is moving into a tighter square with Mars. By the time we get to tomorrow night, Tuesday morning, like it is bang on. It feels like more of these idiotic climate change assholes will be more than happy to desecrate more public sites like Stonehenge. It kind of feels like that. It feels like we're just getting started on the summer of Extinction Rebellion. It's just absolutely nuts. Totally nuts. Do you know that I'm not sure if it's back on, but the entire power went out in Ecuador, and I think like what 3/4 of the Philippines. And I don't know. Maybe somebody in chat could. I know Ecuador was out for a long time. I don't know if it's back on again. And I know that they supposedly cut at least 2 cables. These undersea cables to Vietnam. Crazy shit. Anyway, I'm just thinking about. It just feels like we always talk about chaos, and it just feels like the chaos is mounting. It's just mounting. And when this Mars hits this Uranus on July 15th through the 17th, that, my friends, is a big transit, a really big transit. And we've gone into this. Why? Because it hits Israel's sun. Israel's sun is right there, right in the 8th house, and Israel's got all these planets in Leo, and they're all at the top of the chart. And Mars is in Leo at 28 degrees, right? So it's not just Mars Uranus conjunction, but squaring. It's also Trump's Mars too, by the way. So what's interesting is from here on out, everything that is aligned with Israel also seems to be very aligned with Trump because of these hard aspects, right? Trump has Taurus on his midheaven. He's got Algol on his midheaven, right? And that's where Uranus is. I was thinking about Kathy Griffin and this whole Algol thing. And you remember when she had Trump's head? Right. It was, I mean, when you go back and look at that, like people will say, oh, well, that's really disgusting. Kathy Griffin is a horrible American. But it was really interesting from a kind of an astrosync standpoint, in that, yeah, I mean, his head is at, 20, his midheaven is at 25 Algol, right? And I thought, or 25 Taurus, which is conjunct Algol. I'm like, well, she's clearly tapping in to the astrological symbolism, right? It's like, whatever you think of Kathy Griffin, I'm not a huge Kathy Griffin fan, but I thought from an astrological standpoint, I'm like, wow, that's fucking interesting. But now Kathy Griffin can't speak because apparently she had this cancer stuff going on and she had this operation. So now she can't speak. So isn't it interesting that it's the throat that is also playing a role in Kathy Griffin's life, where she did this thing with Trump? It's almost like the reverse of sympathetic magic coming back on her. And, and Trump has this really interesting vibe in that direction, right? And I've often spoken of as being supernatural. Like Trump has this weird supernatural thing going on, where these things happen to the people that take him on or do shit against him, and somehow it sort of flips back on. They call it the Streisand effect or something like that. And I don't know, I think it's fascinating. I've never seen anybody publicly actually have that without actually doing anything. So yeah, there you go. Kathy Griffin, the symbolic cutting off of the head, and now she can't speak. Pretty interesting, huh? So get into your Cancer season, right? Get into it and soak it up, soak it in, and take care of all your little creatures and critters and your gardens and your neighbors, and maybe have a barbecue or whatever you do, right? And solidify those bonds, because I think it's very important. Very important. And I'd be very surprised, and I'd love to be wrong. I'd be very surprised if we would be having a conversation like this again next year. Now, the world will go on. Like, we're still going to have a world. We're still going to go through all these things, right? We're going to have, but what we go through, I think, will be decidedly different. And you could say, well, we just have Biden again. Like, do you really think that the American people are going to stand? Let's say it's a replay of 2020. Do you really think that the American people are going to stand by and just let an election go the course of the way that the election keepers are directing it? I don't think so. Right? I really don't think so. And the same thing can be said for the other side, right? So let's say, Trump, with all this huge donor money, manages to pull off a win, but the other side contests. I think they're already contesting it. Hasn't Biden already contested the outcome of the election? That's what I've heard. So just imagine like what that world is going to be like, right? And how we essentially are able to organize, self-organize, whatever on the other side of that event, right? I'd be very surprised if it was, oh, look, slam dunk winner, Donald Trump is president, and we have all these polls in, and it's just, an autumn, it's just a complete slaughter. And here you go. Shake your hand, President Trump. Welcome back, right? I just don't think it goes down like that. And I've talked about what I think is going to happen, but I don't think it's going to go. And even if it did, so let's say it did. Let's say it was so overwhelming. There are plenty of people. You remember last time? You remember what happened last time he got elected? Double that and triple that this time. Double that and triple that, because they've had 4 years of Joe Biden and basically doing anything they want. They being the Democratic Party, whoever runs it, whoever's behind it, anything they want. And it's like, well, we had another 4 years of that shit. And last 4 has been really good. But then you throw Trump on top of that. No, not going to work. Not going to work. Okay. So I wanted to talk about Neptune and Pisces, and the end of really like the Piscean age. And with the Piscean age, we get, we have to re-examine our relationship with the 3 Abrahamic faiths, right? So I've been thinking a lot about this, and there have just been some events over the last week that are confirmations of, being at the end of the line here. And it's not just Christianity, by the way. All 3 of these faiths are coming under the spotlight, the heat lamp, right? Because whatever happens after Neptune and Pisces and Neptune and Aries, that's a whole different relationship with quote unquote spirituality. So we're going to go back in time, look at a few epochs, and how this thing has worked out. But the first thing I want to do is I want to bring up the chart for Archbishop Vigano. Now, I don't have his birth time. So so what do I have him at? I just put him at 12:30 p.m. So I have him as a sun in the 10th house person. So why don't we check this out? Okay. Now this really got my attention when the moon was in Pisces. I'm sorry, Sagittarius. When the moon was in Sagittarius and it was squaring Neptune, like, oh, look at that. He's being summoned to the Vatican because he's been outspoken, and the Pope is going to accuse him of schism, right? And schism means that he's breaking with the church. And I did not grow up Catholic. In fact, I didn't even grow up. I was baptized, but that was about it. But I didn't really understand the allegiance to the Pope until about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. So I was at Joan's mother's house, and I really like Joan's mom. She's like total old school, right? She's fucking walks 5 miles a day, and she's made of really tough stuff, right? And her political positions are obviously very conservative. But then we got into this conversation about religion, and particularly the Catholic Church. And I said, "Oh, I think the Catholic Church should go back to pre-Vatican I. Put the mass back in Latin." And she was all aghast about that. And then we got into the Pope a little bit, and it was like anything that the Pope did or said, you had to accept. And I realized that I could never be a Catholic because I couldn't do that. Right? I couldn't just accept this guy as being a representative of the Heavenly Father on earth. I'm just not wired that way. And I didn't understand the adherence and obedience to authority to that extent until I had that conversation with her. And she's a nice woman, and she's got her priority straight. But then this whole allegiance to the Pope thing is mind blowing, honestly. So that's why when this guy Vigano speaks up about what's going on, that it is really a very big deal. Like, it's an incredibly big deal. And so I decided to look at his chart and, see what this guy's made of. He's a Capricorn. And somehow, Capricorn just feels like a sign that is, very hierophantic. When I think of the Hierophant, I think of Taurus, but I also think of Capricorn as the Hierophant. Who's the administrator of worldly affairs and the religious from the religious world. So I feel like Capricorn is kind of it fits for somebody who is at a higher level of the hierarchy inside of the church, right? And he's got Mercury conjunct his sun. So this is somebody who will speak his mind, right? This is how this works, right? His thoughts and his identity are coupled together by 4 degrees. What's interesting about this degree of Capricorn on the Sabian symbols is that it is behind the scenes a group of men, behind the scenes, a secret group of men make plans for the world. It's a really interesting degree of Capricorn. And That's what was going on the night of the election when Trump was elected in 2016. Mars is a 29 Capricorn, and it almost feels like somebody made the call. It's like he's president, right? He's president. And you could just see that, Hillary was seething in the morning, and I think Trump was very surprised, to be quite honest with you. Right. So it was almost like, okay, we're making the call. He's going to be the guy, not Hillary. Right. So that's that 29-degree Capricorn. So more than likely, Vigano isn't the only guy in the church who feels the way that he does. So the last pope that they have, what was his name? Ratzinger. I think that's what his name was. Is it Ratzinger or Ratzinger? Anyway, he was, I think, the first pope in years that didn't die out, right? Like they said, you're done. And the reason, he looked like a Sith Lord, right? But that guy was actually way more conservative than Pope Francis. Like that guy was, in a weird way, he kind of got a bad rap because he looked so fucking ugly. But he was way more conservative than Francis, and he was actually engaged in some level of dealing with the Catholic Church and its finances. So he was conservative. I think he belonged to, it wasn't Opus Dei, but it was one of those kinds of groups. And he was a fiscal conservative. I was like, you're gone. You're gone. And so they shuttled him out, right? And then all of a sudden, we have the communist pope. So I would think that at 29 degrees, Vigano is not the only guy. Like he's probably got his, his own sort of coterie inside of the church or his own secret group, and they probably know that, right? Now, what's interesting is Pluto retrograding, coming right back onto his Mercury, which it will, and I wonder what'll happen during that time. I could see this guy going to some kind of church prison, actually. I don't know if they have that. Where do they just we're just going to send you off to this monastery under, lock and key and guards at the door. I can see that happening with this guy for a number of reasons. And this Pluto retrograde onto Mercury, again, what did we talk about when we were talking about Cancer? We're talking about whistleblowers. And, this guy is kind of like a whistleblower of the Catholic Church. And it's clear that his motives are very different from the other guy in the fish hat. They're just very different. And I wonder if he is going to be able to say what he needs to say before they basically throw away the lock and key on him. Because you can see this in his chart, right? Like he's going through this Neptune opposition right here. So he has Neptune in Virgo, and it's retrograde, but it's also conjunct his true node in Libra. So you can kind of see the ecclesiastic path that this guy took, right? Virgo, all about service. And the true node in Libra is that he's trying to be balanced and fair. And he's probably seen a great deal of imbalance and unfairness as part of what's going on. So he's got this Neptune opposition. And then he also has Pluto coming up here and going to the Pluto opposition. So he's no spring chicken. If people make it through the Pluto opposition, there's a pretty good chance that they will make it deep into their 90s or even their 100s. That's if they make it through the Pluto opposition. So he's just got too many things going on here. Right. Again, we don't know what his rising sign is. I just put his Sun and Mercury up here because I did a 12. I said a 12:30 p.m. chart. So these are the two. Now his Neptune will conjunct his south node, and or transiting Neptune will conjunct his south node. That'll start to happen in what, 2 years, right? So Neptune goes into Aries next year, retrogrades a little bit, comes back again. So 2 years from now, in full, Neptune will conjunct his south node. And this guy's been a warrior before, but here in this go around, he's supposed to be a peacemaker. I and he's have that nodal conjunction. That'll be interesting too. Like his nodal conjunction here. That's next year as well, just prior to Neptune and Saturn going into Pisces. But he has a lot of opposition. I mean, literally, he has a lot of opposition going on. Neptune, Pluto, and then Pluto on Mercury and retro. So I wonder if he's going to be able to say what he needs to say before they sort of, put him into monastery prison, because I feel like that's where this guy is going ultimately. Is monastery prison. They don't want him speaking up. Now they could say, hey, just keep your mouth shut and support this, and you'll stay out of monastery prison. But I don't think this guy is wired that way. He's got Mars in Sagittarius. So Mars in Sagittarius is in pursuit of the truth. And he has a trining Chiron, and he has a trining Pluto. That big Mars-Pluto trine. Are you kidding? This whatever happens, he's willing to face the consequences. He is willing to face the consequences. This man will die for the truth. With that Mars-Pluto trine, without a doubt, he'll die for the truth. The Venus-Neptune square is interesting because it feels like he's being literally betrayed by the people that surround him that are in fairly high places, which is what Venus and Capricorn would be about, right? It's like your relationship with hierarchies, essentially. And there's that Venus that feels very much like betrayal, right? That feels very much like crucifixion. And I wonder if he sees himself in that role of being crucified, right? Like, is he now taking on the imitation of Christ, right? Has he been involved in upturning the tables in the merchant stalls inside of the temple? Is this what he's been doing by going public with a lot of the things that he talks about? Quite possibly. But I don't think this guy is afraid to die at all. At all. He's also quite stubborn. He's got that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Taurus. So he's quite stubborn. No mere threat, I think, will keep him from saying or speaking out about what he wants to or needs to. Right. I mean, it's just stubborn, period. End of story. And then, of course, we've got Mercury coming in there and squaring Jupiter and squaring Saturn. And then there's the Pluto square down here as well. And this he's willing to die for his beliefs. And you may think, oh, just lighten up, dude. Just lighten up and get that nice church pension. He's way beyond that nice church pension. Like, this is the amalgamation of this man's life, right? Think of it all sort of funneling into this one point. Like, everything that he's ever studied, learned, spoke of, prayed on, administered to, it's all coming down to these moments, right? It's like the funnel of his existence is coming, and he's going to see what he's made of, right? This is literally a religious drama that's being played out in his life, because I don't think it's just like, well, okay, you're gone, we'll take your title away from you. Does that stop him from speaking out? I don't think so. I also think this is a guy that needs to be, I think he needs to pay attention to his life in general, right? With that Pluto opposition. And even Mars, like, where's Mars is still pretty early, right? So Mars is at 10 degrees. So he's kind of gotten past the hard part. Like, if there was something that was going to happen to him, I think that Mars square with Pluto about a week ago might have been one of those moments in time where his plane might have landed under unusual circumstances, right? Um, but coming in here, Mars is just kind of adding fuel to the fire. This guy's not going to back down. So I thought about this, right? In terms of this, Neptune and Pisces, and then the kind of, drawing towards the end or the conclusion of a time like this, that all these Abrahamic faiths have been very strong for, we'll just use this as a timestamp, the last 2,000 years, although we'll use that timestamp loosely. But things are changing, right? And one of the things that's changing is Vagano, who is actually challenging the Pope in his own way, right? So I don't think we've ever really seen, at least according to me now, E. Michael Jones is probably a better source of information along these lines than I am. But have we ever seen a high-ranking official in the Catholic Church take on the standing Pope? I can't remember it, right? I can't remember anything like that. I don't know. I think of, Bishop Desmond Tutu, but his message was probably more in alignment with the popes at the time, right? It wasn't like he was calling the Pope out, but this guy's he's definitely calling the Pope out. He's calling his version of Catholicism out. This is a very, very big deal. So when you see this, right, what you're seeing is the actual tradition itself under fire and being called into question. So I think that that's really interesting. Now, there's some other things. Now, just remember that. Just keep that in mind, right? Just remember him and what he's going through, because we're going to go back in time and I'm going to show you another person that went through something very similar in his own right when Neptune was at the 29th degree of Pisces a long time ago. But before I do that, let me just do a quick little shout out for my buddy, my guy Chris over at True Hemp Science. And if you have any interest in CBD products to help you sleep, help you deal with inflammation, if you have any kind of topical issues, I know somebody out there bought some of one of Steve's creams for one of their skin issues, right? Or Chris's, I'm sorry, not Steve, but Chris's creams, or crispy creams for a skin issue, right? So there are absolutely plenty of CBD products over at truehempscience.com. If you go there, you can make an appointment, you can talk to them about the products. And if you spend $100 or more, just type in 15MINS. That's 15MINS. And you will get a free goodie bag with your shipment. $150 more gets you free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money back guarantee. So I gotta get a hit in there for my friend Chris in True Hemp Science. Don't forget to hit like as well and subscribe. There's a little midstream reminder for you. All right, so there were some things that happened this week that were really trippy, right? Really trippy. And it gets right into what we're talking about. So this is from 6 hours ago. Let me throw this up here. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I don't need this. Okay, so check this out. So this is happening at the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. More than 1,300 people, pilgrims, died during the Hajj. Like, when has that happened? Now, I know that there are fatalities that happen there, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. And it's interesting that they're using the number 13, right, in the story, which is the number of death. Saudi Arabia said Sunday that more than 1,300 faithful died during the Hajj pilgrimage, which took place during intense heat, and that most of the deceased did not have official permits. So these motherfuckers are dedicated. Regrettably, the number of mortalities reached 1,301, with 83% being unauthorized to perform Hajj and having walked long distances under direct sunlight without adequate shelter or comfort, said the Saudi press agency reported. An AFP tally last week, based on official statements and reports from diplomats involved in their country's responses, put the toll at more than 1,100. Arab diplomats told AFP that Egyptians accounted for 658 of the 630 unregistered pilgrims. Riyadh had not publicly commented on the deaths or provided its own toll Sunday. On Friday, however, a senior Saudi official gave AFP a partial toll of 577 deaths for the two busiest days of Hajj, June 15th, when pilgrims gathered for hours of prayers in the blazing sun on Mount Arafat, and on June 16th, when they participated in the stoning of the devil ritual in Mina. Have you guys ever seen that? So they have this big lingam, right? This big stone lingam, which is Shaitan, right? Sheitn, and they get these rocks and they throw them at this big lingam, right? They're throwing these rocks and so I guess 577 people died during the stoning of the devil. Now, if you've ever seen any documentaries on people making this pilgrimage, it is not an easy thing to do. First of all, you're basically fasting from sunup to sundown. There are all these like stations. We won't call them stations of the cross, but they're kind of like that. You go to all these different pilgrimage sites, and then you have to pray and prostrate and do all these other things, right? So by the time you get to the rock of the not the rock of the dome, the Al-Aqsa, not Al, the Hajj, right? By the time you get to the Hajj, the pilgrim is in a heightened state of sensory deprivation, so that when this thing happens, they could have some kind of spiritual breakthrough experience. So it's all the preparation and everything that's done to get there is all part of it. So that when you get there and you're at that moment in time, you're kind of weak. Your own personal will has been kind of ground down, right? So you're open to the forces of whatever is being generated at that point. The official also defended Riyadh's response, saying the state did not fail, but there was a misjudgment on part of the people who do not appreciate the risks. So this is kind of a big deal, right? Kind of a big deal. It said the rise of the number of deaths of unregistered Egyptian pilgrims stemmed from some companies which organize the Hajj programs using a personal visit visa, which prevents its holders from entering Mecca via official channels. So I guess the Hajj permits are allocated to countries on a quota system distributed to individuals by lottery. Even for those who can obtain them, the steep costs for many to attempt the Hajj without a permit, though they risk arrest and deportation if caught. So that's a big deal. 1,300 people killed at the Hajj. Hey, it's one of the big three, right? It's part of the Abrahamic Trinity. And I think it's really interesting that this is happening at 29 Cancer. That this holy site and this pilgrimage winds up really becoming, in many ways, like a killing field. Like a massive killing field. Okay, so there's that. Let me show you a couple of other things that popped on my screen. This is from about a week ago, And there are two pastors from the Dallas area who have both had to step down in the last couple weeks. The first one is Tony Evans. And Tony Evans was a really Dr. Tony Evans' son talks to his father. So Tony Evans is kind of a big deal in Christianity, right? And this is a guy that Jason Whitlock follows. He's 74 years old. He's a Virgo, and he's a pastor of this mega church. And like, if you go into Dallas, you will see Tony Evans' picture on the side of the freeway as you're entering into Dallas, right? You'll see. It's like these pastors, these mega churches they're stars, and you see his bill. So this guy stepped down because of some sin he had committed, and it came out like he probably banged somebody, right? So Tony Evans steps down. Okay, so let's just go through this a little bit here now. You have Vigano, who is taking on the Pope and being summoned to the Vatican because he is probably going to be accused of schism, right? So just, that's in its own separate category. Then you have 1,300 people who die at Mecca, right? And you can say, well, geez, at least they died for their faith. But I don't think those people in Mecca wanted those people to die, right? Like, they want those people to go there and have their pilgrimage so that they can go back out into the world and preach the gospel of Allah. That's 1,300 less, Allah gospel preachers that they now have as part of their faith. I don't think they want those people to die, but I think it's significant, right? All right, then we have Tony Evans. I'm going to give you another one here. Give me 1 second. This is all within the last week. So here's another one. Terrible. Gateway Church. Where's Gateway Church? It's in Dallas. And this guy right here, Robert Morris. Oh God, please. The associations here are a little too close to comfort. He was like a big deal, this guy, right? Really big deal. Author, huge church. He steps down. It's been a difficult week for the congregation of the Gateway Church's 9 campuses across North Texas after their founding pastor, Robert Morris, was accused of sexually assaulting a child in the 1980s. So he had a fling going on with this girl when she was 12, and he was with her until she was 16. And she came out and blew the whistle. The congregation is still reeling from the news that their founding pastor was accused of sexually assaulting a young girl beginning in 1982 when she was just 12 years old. A church elder began Saturday service with an emotional message for the church community. As an elder, I did not know the truth, and frankly, like many of you, my wife and I are shocked, devastated, and grieving, said Traub Wilbanks, a Gateway Church elder. I'd like to express my personal compassion for Cindy Clemshire. I can't imagine carrying a burden like that for so many years. And I want to say to you, Cindy, I'm so sorry. So I guess Cindy Clemshire basically busted him. Morris's accuser, Cindy Clemshire, says the abuse continued until 1987. Morris was a traveling evangelist at the time and was close to the accuser's family. In a statement to the Christian Post, Morris admitted to inappropriate sexual behavior. A statement posted on social media from elders at the church said the allegations were brought to light 35 years ago. So they knew about this. Oh. And he stepped away for 2 years to receive counseling. Simply put, abuse in any form will not be tolerated, and we as elders have the responsibility to do whatever it takes to learn the truth, said Will Banks. Interesting. So this is a bigger deal, right? Like, they knew that this had happened, and the allegations were brought to light 35 years ago. He stepped away for 2 years of counseling, and then he got back on the pulpit again. So they knew, right? They knew. And I guess based on his 2 years away and his counseling, I guess he was good to go, right? So he can step down, but the aftershock through these churches is going to continue, because whoever was involved in, his therapeutic rehabilitation is going to have to answer some questions. All right, so let's add this up again, right? So you got this guy Robert Morris from the Gateway Church, huge. This guy's got books, heavily published, right? You've got Tony Evans, same area, huge pastor. They both stepped down within 2 weeks. You have 1,300 people that literally died, due to heat and whatever other circumstances at the Hajj in Mecca. You have on the Catholic side the Vagano Pope Francis conflict getting ready to come to a head. And then let's talk about Israel, right? Let's talk about Israel and what's happening in Israel right now. And that's another of the Abrahamic faiths that's on fire or under fire. You've got people who are in Israel who are now starting to protest against Netanyahu in a huge way, right? And Netanyahu basically, he's unhinged, and he fired his deputy of war, whatever. So Netanyahu has always managed to dodge his critics and whatever charges of quote unquote corruption that he's been charged with. And in this regard, he has dodged them by basically starting a war, right? And again, if you go back and there are a number of people who have the receipts on October 7th, and it does not look good for Netanyahu in terms of how that whole story went down. And now the world is really looking at what's going on in Israel, right? There's this examination of what's taking place there that hasn't happened in quite a while, if ever, right? And it's like, well, they're Zionists, and the Zionists are statists, right? And so they have nothing to do with Judaism and the church or the temple, whatever, right? But if you listen to Netanyahu, he'll tell you otherwise, right? Netanyahu will be more than happy to bring up some kind of parable to underscore his actions and to sell it to the rest of the Israeli people or the rest of the world, right? But just from afar, we're looking at this in the United States, or people looking at it in Western Europe, wherever, right? And they're looking at this and saying, well, holy shit, this is pretty savage. This is pretty brutal. What they're doing is savage and brutal. It's one thing to defend yourself, right? It's another thing to, I'll just come right out and say it, right? Commit genocide. So how does that look upon the people of not just Israel, but Judaism, right? It's not a good look. It's a terrible look. And so if you're somebody who happens to be Jewish, right? And now you've got to deal with this. And you may be reformed or semi-observant or whatever. You say, well, that's not me, right? That's not what I believe in. But it's kind of hard, right? It's kind of hard if you're a Catholic to disassociate yourself from the Vatican, or it's I don't know what the Episcopalian equivalent is. But again, right, that's part of the Abrahamic big three. And now we're seeing what's happening there. And it doesn't seem to be, real spiritual or real religious or real holy. In fact, it feels uh, like the antithesis of all that. So as a result now, and it's just the way it is, right? As a result now, there's this downstream effect from what's happening in Israel to go into places and spaces like Twitter. And I've never seen a harsher period of criticism towards Israel, APAC, the ADL, and Jewish power in general. Like I've never seen this before, right? So again, this is all part of this 29th degree of Neptune and Pisces. And just these, this last week, you had two pastors from these fucking mega churches. They're huge, and they both stumble and fall. And so all of this is going on right now. Like we're watching these, like the faith as it's become metastasized, like these faiths are falling. It's sort of like the trumpets are being sounded, and the pillars of these faiths are shaking dramatically. Now, that's not to say that there aren't, good or decent people inside any of these faiths. We know that there are, and that's the case. But the institutions themselves are being rocked right now, and they'll continue to be rocked as we move through this final degree of Neptune and Pisces. And Neptune and Aries. So the last time we had Neptune and Pisces, going into Neptune and Aries, was during the Civil War. So Neptune goes into Aries the day Fort Sumter falls. One day. They have a siege. Neptune is there, 29 Pisces on the siege. And then the next day, it's Neptune at 0 Aries, and then they surrender the fort. So that's typically the beginning of the Civil War, right? And if you look at the buildup of the Civil War, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more Civil War talk as Neptune and Aries approaches. One of the things that the Civil War, at least from the North, is founded upon is the abolitionist movement, which, for all intents and purposes, has Christianity at the bottom of it, right? It's the foundation of the abolitionist movement. Tends to be Christian, right? That's the whole idea behind it. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it than just that. There's the Civil War is not as easy as it appears to be on the surface. There's a lot of different agendas going on, right? But what happens after the Civil War, to me, is well, there are two things that happen. Number one, you have Lincoln getting involved, and now we have this declaration of war in the South, whatever that is. And it's almost like the state becomes the new religion. This is where we have our first. It's sort of like Lincoln is a predecessor to FDR. Like he has that kind of vibe, right? Now, all of a sudden, the state, when I say the state, I'm talking about the federal government, they become the de facto religion under Neptune and Aries. The state is going to decide what's moral, just, true, right, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, once it's all said and done, the state has accrued a lot more power. You know, even though Lincoln ultimately is not there to wield it, it has accrued a great deal more power. Let me get back here. There we go. Did my screen go black? I got a black screen. All right, listen, I'll be back in a second. Don't go away. Hang in there. We're going to go places here. Give me one moment. And as usual, I lost my tabs. All right, so let me go back here through my history because we're gonna go places now. All right, let's see. All right, all right, all right. Okay. All right, so prior to the Civil War, um, the last time that uh, Neptune was in Pisces was at the anaretic degree. It was in 1698. So let me bring this up here. Hold on a second. Hold on one sec. Oh fuck! I hate it when this happens. I had everything all fucking set up. All right, hold on. Let me go. Astro.com. All right. Thank you for your patience. Just give me 1 second here. Damn, I had it all ready to go. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how long a Neptune cycle is. So Neptune cycles are 165 years. So if you go back in time, right, the last time Neptune was at 29 degrees Pisces was right before the Civil War. Right. So if we do the math on that and we go into the 19th century, so what are we talking? Oh, right here. Let's see. So it'd be 1862. So 1862. I'll give you the bird's eye view here. So 1862. You can see it, right? It's right there. So there's our friend Neptune right there, anaretic degree, 1862. So what we would have to do is we'd have to go back another 165 years. And I had all this shit. Give me 1 second. Okay, so 1697 was, so I was looking at 1698, 1697. So I had it right. Okay. All right. So let's look at both of those years. 1698, 1697. Let's do this. All right. So this is really interesting based on everything that we just talked about, right? Like with Vigano being part of the schism. You have Robert Morris and Tony Evans being, kicked to the curb because they couldn't keep their dicks in their pocket. So check this out. On May 1st, 1697, this is when Neptune is at 29 Pisces. It was called the Banishment Act, and it went into effect for Roman Catholic Church officials in Ireland, having been the deadline for all popish archbishops, bishops, vicars general, deans, Jesuits, monks, friars, and other regular popish clergy to have reported to Irish ports for deportation. Just think about that, right? Think about that. This is 29 Pisces, Neptune. Basically, the English are kicking out all the Irish Catholics, or who are ultimately Roman Catholics, right? So re-entry to Ireland after May 4th of 1698 is a criminal offense with a penalty of 12 months imprisonment and expulsion, while a second re-entry is punishable by death as treason. Now, just think about that for a second. How is this like not uncommon from Vigano and Pope Francis, right? Like he's being kicked out. And the English, they don't want them there, right? Who do they want there? They want the Protestants there. They don't want the Roman Catholic Church officials in Ireland, right? I mean, that's pretty fucking amazing. Like, gone, you're out. I mean, there's all these other things that happen there during that time, but that to me is like mind blowing, right? That's actually really mind blowing that they would do that. But again, at 29 Cancer, I'm sorry, 29 Pisces, why wouldn't they do something like that? Okay, so now let's get into the juice. I mean, that's pretty juicy, right? But now let's get into some real juice here. And this is where the Vigano thing, I think, really gets to another level. So we got 1697 and minus 165. So that brings us into the good old days of 1532. The good old days of 1532. All right. And I think it goes also into 1533. Let's go to 1533. Because that's really that's the game changer. Still at 29 Pisces. Yep. Here we go. So we'll go to 1533 and then 1534, which are all part of the same. Let me do this. All right. So 1533, King Henry VIII of England formally but secretly marries Anne Boleyn, who becomes his second queen consort. Right. May 23rd, King Henry VIII of England's marriage with Catherine of Aragon is declared annulled by Archbishop Cranmer, since Pope Clement VII had rejected Henry's petition for annulment in 1530, Catherine continues to believe herself Henry's wife. Cranmer crowns Anne Boleyn as Queen Consort of England in Westminster. Here we go. Henry VII is excommunicated by Pope Clement VII as his Archbishop Cranmer. This is all this is like the end of the reign of the Catholic Church inside of England, right? This is all 29, it's all 29 Neptune Pisces stuff right here, right? This is a big one. This is really huge. Really, really huge. So he's excommunicated. All right. So let's go 1 year after this. And I believe because of the retrogrades with Neptune and Pisces, this is where it finally lands. Okay, so here we go. The Parliament of England passes the act of respecting the oath to the succession, recognizing, so this is the Parliament, this is not the church, of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn and their children as the legitimate heirs to the throne. Then on February 23rd, this is crazy too, right? A group of Anabaptists led by Jan Mathis seize Munster, Westphalia, and declare it the New Jerusalem and begin to exile dissenters and forcibly baptize all others. So you can see that the pillars of the faith, even back here in 1534, are very shaky, right? This dude is like, basically saying Germany is the new Jerusalem. And if you're not in, you're out. And we're going to start to baptize everybody. The Portuguese crown divides colonial Brazil into 15 donatory captaincies, but that's not really what we're looking at here. The Submission of Clergy Act, 1533, becomes law in England, requiring submission to the clergy. The churchmen are to submit to the king, and the publication of ecclesiastical laws without royal permission is forbidden. Isn't that interesting? Here we go. Anabaptist John Mathis is killed by the Landsknecht who laid siege to Munster on the day he predicted as the second coming of Christ. His follower, John Leyden John Leyden of the Sex Pistols, takes control of the city. So this dude basically took control of the city, and he predicted that the second coming of Christ was going to happen. It doesn't happen. And he's killed. Like, this is all Neptune Pisces 29 stuff. Now, here we go. This is what I would call the Vigano analog. April 13th, Sir Thomas More, having been brought before a royal commission to swear his allegiance to the Parliamentary Act of Succession, testifies that he accepts Parliament's right to declare Anne Boleyn the legitimate Queen of England, but denies that the marriage is spiritually valid of the king's second marriage, holding fast to the Roman Catholic doctrine of papal supremacy. More refuses to take the oath of supremacy toward King Henry VIII. More is confined in the Tower of London. He will be executed by hanging on July 6, 1535. So to me, he is the analog of Vigano in a lot of ways, right? He is the analog of Vigano. And More is going to hold fast to his guns and say, no, I'll agree to the act of, he accepts Parliament's right to declare Anne Boleyn legitimate Queen of England, but denies that the marriage is spiritually valid in light of the king's second marriage, right? Holding fast. So this is, what do you call that? It's called a schism. It's a schism. So this is now where we have the beginning of the Church of England. So this is all Neptune Pisces stuff right here, 29 degrees, right? So we're seeing a lot of this play out. So this historical cycle has been with us before. You go forward to the next cycle, they're basically kicking out the Roman Catholics out of Ireland, right? They're kicking them out because they don't want them there. They basically want a Protestant church in Ireland. So we see these things happen, during these Neptune 29 Pisces moments, but usually it just happens with one of the faiths, right? But now we're seeing this thing sort of creep across all these faiths, and we're watching. I mean, look, what happened at the Hajj is terrible, right? It's like this terrible event because basically they had too many people, not enough resources, not enough water, and you would say, well, that's just a byproduct of overzealotry and not enough preparation. But that in and of itself as a symbol is really powerful. It's a very, very powerful symbol, right? It is a symbol of death, at the most sacred and holy place for the Muslim faith. And I just went through those other two guys who got shaken out. And you've got Vigano, who is being, basically put under the heat lamp by the current pope and everything that is about. And then you have this major thing going on with Israel and people, looking and questioning what's happening there, what's happening here. And the big challenge with that is that, like, when you deal with the church, with the exception of the Vatican, a Catholic can be anywhere. Like a Catholic can be a Brazilian, or a Catholic can be somebody from Columbus, Ohio, right? But when you deal with Judaism, it's a whole different amalgamation of family, belief, people, right, and even a country. So it's a much broader sort of application of everything that we're talking about. But nonetheless, right, there's this trickle down effect that's taking place from the Middle East, and people are watching this, and they're not crazy about it, right? They're just not crazy about what they're seeing. And so now we have these bigger, broader discussions about what's going on there, and then what their role is, and the government of the United States, and who supports it and who doesn't support it, and I haven't even gotten into the whole Christian Zionist thing because it's a big part of it, right? But we're at this point where these faiths are getting very shaky, right? They're getting really shaky, which is what happens at the end of a Neptune Pisces conjunction, in Pisces. I mean, look what happens in the church. Look what happens in England. Basically, the Church of England becomes born out of all this, right? So, where's it all going? Because it feels to me like if these periods in history are true, and even with the Civil War, like, it felt to me like, again, whatever narrative of the Civil War you want to like tap into, right? The one narrative that seems to be commonplace amongst the most generally known narrative is that the people in the quote unquote North, the abolitionist movement, comes out of a religious place, right? That's theoretically where it comes from. And then we have the state getting involved, and then the state ultimately becomes a religion post Lincoln, right? So where does that lead us? Where do we go once Neptune leaves Pisces? It'll be a very interesting journey. That's for sure. Right. It'll be because in England, they had a whole new church. Right. They went from the Catholic Church to the Church of England, which is ultimately the Protestants, right? And out of that, you have a bunch of these offshoots that eventually, are part of the fractional divide of the original, Catholic faith. And I think you could go a number of different directions. Number one, we've talked about Mike Johnson and his crew and the new apostolic movement, right? Which is, kind of waiting in the wings. And it looks and feels a lot like a Christian ethno state to some extent, right? It sort of feels like that. You get the Mike Johnsons and the Mike Pences of the world, and, they're all kind of robotic. It kind of feels a little like, the underground world of a boy and his dog. It kind of has that vibe a little bit, or it feels like The Handmaid's Tale, right? It has that kind of vibe in some ways. And, that's quite possible. That version of order is quite possible with Neptune and Saturn and Aries, right? Or, you could have a new military order that emerges out of that, right? And the military becomes the de facto religion of the state. There's a lot of different ways that this thing can go, but I would guarantee you that it's not going to be business as usual with the three Abrahamic faiths, because we're coming to an end of a cycle, and particularly with Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, that's another big part of the deal. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with Thomas More, so what are we talking about? 1534. I think Pluto might have been in Aquarius in 1534. Let me just go back and look here. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, Pluto. Okay, so dig this, right? So we have Neptune, the anaretic degree of Pisces, in 1534. I'll show you. Right here. So if you want to see the receipts, they're right here, right? So there's your anaretic degree of Neptune. This is the end of the Catholic Church as we know it in England. It's the beginning of the Church of England. Sir Thomas More sacrifice right here, right? And then we have Pluto right there in Aquarius, just like we have Pluto in Aquarius right now. Isn't that interesting? It's hell of interesting. And then you see here where Neptune goes into Aries, and that's on March 8th, right? So eventually, in 1535, Thomas More would lose his life. But this is the beginning of the end for More right here. And it's really the beginning of the end of the Roman Catholic Church in England. So there you go. There's a little historical journey with what happens when Neptune is at the anaretic degree of Pisces. And we can even see kind of in our current time, right? You got these pastors, these mega churches, they're dropping like flies. You got people at Mecca dropping like flies. You've got this whole massive controversy of, what's going on in Israel, and, this whole idea of Judaism and anti-Semitism and all these, this old discussion has been going on for a very long time, is now, coming up again. So those are the three heads of the Abrahamic faith. And I'd say probably out of the three, maybe Islam is probably the strongest positioned in some ways, only because of everything that's happened in terms of migration over the last 20 years. But again, when you see something like that happen in Mecca, it's more than just a bunch of people who were, dehydrated and exhausted. To me, it's really symbolic. That's a symbolic moment. Just as these guys from these mega churches are getting drummed out of their churches, that's totally symbolic. Totally symbolic. So yeah, a lot of you are like, yeah, bring it on. Let's get rid of these major religions, or let's get rid of these the big three. Well, here's what I have to say. All of them have metastasized into I think something very different than what they started out to be, all of them. Although one can make a case that of the three, Christianity is the one that's metastasized the most and has become a how would I describe it? Kind of kind of a fat, bloated, lazy version of what it once was, whatever it once was, right? One could theoretically make a case for that. I mean, the whole idea of the mega church is despicable, honestly, and that's what these pastors with these small churches have to deal with. All right, I'm going to give you a story before I get out of here. I highly recommend if you can find it, and maybe Tom or somebody in chat can put it in chat. Watch Jason Whitlock's show on Friday, and it's about his buddy who went to school with him at Ball State. They didn't really know each other, and this guy has started a church in the hardest part of Chicago, and it's very inspirational, very very inspirational. So even though the pillars are shaking in the big three, this guy is Pastor Brooks. He's a very inspirational guy. The other thing that's really interesting is Tucker Carlson's guest that he had last week. It was Vince Williams, and he talked about Martin Luther King, and he talked about sort of tearing down King status, as a man of the cloth, as a social activist. I mean, anybody who's ever studied King knows exactly what he's talking about. But again, that came out too, right? That came out about a week ago at Neptune Pisces 29, and there was a time when Martin Luther King would have been canonized. Maybe they already did. I don't know. Maybe they already canonized him. He would have been canonized. I mean, that's how big and popular his quote unquote work in the civil rights movement and being a minister brought to him, right? But that's never going to happen. Not now. Not when the story of Martin Luther King is really finally being revealed. Again, that's all Neptune Pisces 29 stuff, right? So these are very interesting times. Again, it doesn't mean that there aren't people inside of these establishments that aren't doing good work, because I think that there are. But it's kind of like trimming the fat, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like we're getting to this place where we're going to have to trim the fat. And that at the end of the day, whatever is meaningful and appropriate to any of those three, well, that'll survive. That'll survive. Whatever isn't appropriate won't. But what comes out of that, what is birthed out of that, is something that we may not have any real context for, because that Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries it just brings up so much in a lot of ways that wrapping your head around it could hurt, right? It could hurt when you wrap your head around it. Something new is coming, some new kind of faith and discipline is coming, and you may not like it. That's the other side of it. You may not like it. Some people might. Some people may be really into it, but you may not like it. We'll talk more about it. I've got a lot of other feelings about the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, which has nothing to do with replacement theory for any of the Abrahamic faiths, but does obviously affect you. All right. Thanks for being here. We did it, got through it. I started at 6:30. It's 9:00 now. We're 2.5 hours in. And I think it was your energy. Your energy pulled me through tonight's show. Your energy and Peachy pulled me through tonight's show. So again, thanks for being here. If you're interested in booking a reading from me, just go to my services page. You can link in on that right there on the show notes. Come join Locals and support me on Locals. We're going to do a behind the scenes with astrology this month. And I'm going to show people basically how to go about working with the ephemeris, going back in time, looking at certain points of your life, looking at certain transits. And it can be very, very helpful to understand how to do this and say, oh, yeah, that's what was going on. That makes a lot of sense. So, and you can apply this to anything that you're doing in your life. Past tense, of course, future tense, you have to throw yourself into the future moment and then see where you land. Anyway, you can also buy me a cup of coffee if you like. That link is there as well, and support the show. And those of you who have, I'm very grateful for your support on so many levels, whether it's coming out and watching the show on Sunday nights, or supporting me through a cup of coffee, or joining Locals, or actually having a reading with me. It means a great deal. I will have all the information you need for the event in October come Monday. I just have to get my figures from Jana at the hotel. I asked her a couple of weeks ago. She hadn't sent them. I'll have them on Monday, and I'll have something up on the website on Monday. So it is the first weekend of October. The first weekend of October is when we will have our annual event here in Kerrville, and it promises to be another great event every year. They just keep getting better and better and better, and more people fall in love with each other, and lifetime connections are made when people show up at this event. So I hope to see you, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday with the Astro Weather. Until then, take good care of yourselves. And my new mantra is you have everything inside of you that you need. It's all inside of you. You just have to ask for it. And the other thing that I'm keen on these days is let's treat each other well, right? Let's treat each other well, and let's treat each other like, you know, I am my brother's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. Unless, of course, somebody's a complete asshole, in which case you just move on down the road. All right? Take good care. Much love to all of you. God bless. We'll see you back here on Tuesday. Bye for now.